These are home movies that my father, Phil Allender, took of his whitewater adventures in the late 1960s. Dad had a canoe that he bought to get to the best fishing places on the river. This meant that he would paddle through some small rapids, so he put a canvas cover over the canoe so he wouldn't swamp. Soon he discovered that you could make a fiberglass canoe with a fiberglass deck and paddle through rapids that were a little more intense. Here's a picture of Dad along with Joe Monahan and Todd Martin, the three amigos. These three were some of the pioneers of whitewater sport in West Virginia and western Maryland. Their accomplishments included the first descent of the Blackwater Canyon in 1971, the formation of the Appalachian River Runners Federation, affectionately known as ARF, and the establishment of whitewater races on the Savage River in western Maryland. But more about ARF and the Savage River races later. The Youghiogheny River in Ohiopyle State Park was a frequent weekend getaway. The Yough is close to Cumberland, Maryland, where we lived at the time. It's also close to Pittsburgh. Along with easy access, it has a stable water flow in the summer and lots of Class 3 rapids, like Cucumber Rapids, shown here. At the bottom of Cucumber, there is a big pool, so it's a good place to practice skills like surfing or ferrying across a current. There was also entertainment. You could practice an Eskimo roll, or a wet exit if your roll didn't work. In those days, there were many people on the river in Grumman canoes. I still remember seeing a group of 4 or 5 guys paddling through railroad rapids, standing up. Getting pinned was the downside of not having any flotation. There weren't any swiftwater rescue courses or established rope techniques. They were learning as they went. In retrospect, it's somewhat comical to watch as they try to pull the pin boat upstream off the rock against the current. Most paddlers at the time took part in whitewater slalom races, where you had to maneuver your boat through a series of gates. There were penalties added to your running time for touching the poles or missing the gate. There was also a team gate, where 3 members of a team had 15 seconds to get through the specified gate. Slalom races were a great way to practice eddy turns, ferries, or paddling upstream. These were all skills that could be really useful when running new rivers or new rapids. The first Yough slalom races were held in Entrance Rapids, before they were eventually moved downstream to Dartmouth Rapids. Dartmouth Rapids got its name from the Ledyard Canoe Club of Dartmouth University in New Hampshire, who used to set up training courses there. These were heavy homemade boats that the guys were trying to maneuver around here. Because the boats were used on their whitewater trips, they were built for strength, not speed, and this added to their weight. Boats had to be a specified length and width, and for a C1 or C2, the ends of the boat had to be higher than the center. Boats were inspected before the race, and those boats that passed had a logo stenciled on the deck, which made it easy to tell which other races a boat had competed in. If you couldn't make a clean run, at least you could go fast. Sometimes it was easier to just skip a particularly difficult gate. Stringing wires across the river and hanging gates was hard work, so having gate 11 also be gate 14, as seen here, could be a big time saver. The Tygart River, near Fairmont, West Virginia, has easy access and some good rapids. Here they are running the rapids right below Valley Falls. These days, people run the waterfall in the background and skip the rapids. But not many people ran the waterfall in those days. Paddling in the bow of a C2 with a more experienced paddler in the stern was a good way to get some experience. Shavers Fork is in the headwaters of the Cheat River Basin. Many West Virginia rivers like Shavers Fork can only be run in the winter when the water is high enough. This picture of Joe, pointing out the obvious waterfall, became an iconic image in the Allender household. To this day, outdoor photos show family members pointing to something really obvious in memory of Joe. This looks like it could be trouble. The third paddler looks like he was ejected from the boat before it was even upside down. Keep in mind that he isn't wearing a dry suit as he jumps into this freezing river with an undercut shelf of ice on the shore. It looks like there are giant blocks of ice on both sides of the river looking downstream. Check out the nylon spray skirts. Their wetsuits were made for scuba divers, not for paddlers. So there was lots of chafing in the armpits and bunching behind the knees. A nylon jacket over your life jacket was sure to add plenty of warmth. The boats had a lot of scars on the hull. Duct tape was used to slow the leaks until warmer weather and a fiberglass patch could be made. Some boats would have an extra 5 pounds of fiberglass patch on the hull, mostly on the stern, which was most prone to cracking when you hit the rocks hard as you went over a drop. Dad was 6.5 feet tall, and kneeling inside a C1 wasn't very comfortable. I always thought he was sitting on the deck behind the cockpit. The Savage River in western Maryland was another frequent destination. The Savage provided a great stretch of whitewater, and the level was controlled by a dam. The three amigos made friends with the dam keeper, and for a case of beer, they could sometimes get a release of water for an hour, which was enough to paddle the river. The amigos decided they should hold whitewater races here. So they formed the Alpo Cagnac Cruisers to hold the races. Alpo Cagnac was short for Allegheny Potomac Canoe and Kayak. Since Alpo was a brand of dog food, they changed the name to the Appalachian River Runners Federation. But since they were known as ARF, they didn't quite lose the dog connection. Jim says this was his racing boat, so he had to be really careful on the rocks not to damage the boat. There weren't a lot of eddies that you could get out of the river if you took a swim. The first slalom races on the Savage were held on the upper stretches of the river and ended in the slack water at the dam here. But the guys decided that the best stretch for a race was below the dam. They worried about the safety of racers running the breach in the dam. Eventually, a metal flume was installed. This gave the racers a unique way to start their race. But that didn't come until later. William Neely describes the Savage River as the Whitewater rocket ride. It has an average gradient of 75 feet per mile, with some sections exceeding 100 feet per mile. The Triple Drop Memorial Rock stretch is one of the more challenging sections. The river is steep, narrow, and unrelenting. At levels above 1200 CFS, the Savage is the longest Class 4 to 5 rapid in Maryland. Because the water comes from the bottom of the dam, it is also cold, with an average temperature of 46 degrees. Although it appears to be sunny here, the cold water, newly released from the dam, could create a dense fog that made paddling all the more challenging. Wells Creek is a gem of a whitewater stream north of Cumberland, Maryland. I think that Dad called this rapid Yo-Yo. This is a pretty stout rapid, which I believe is called Railroad Cut Rapids. Dad, Joe, Todd, and the rest of the Appalachian River Runners Federation held the first U.S. Olympic whitewater team trials on the Savage River in 1972. The trials were felt to be a success. Here's a picture of the team that was selected. Jay Evans, the U.S. Olympic slalom coach, wrote a complimentary article for American Whitewater. I've included a link below. Go to page 17.